Hey guys, it's Harrison alongside with Josh, and welcome to the Awkward Sports Podcast. We got a lot to talk about today. We got Bronny going to USC, the Kentucky Derby, boring football players, and two head coaches fired today in two different sports. So for the big subject, just to start off, we'll get LeBron James Jr., also known as Bronny James, is staying in Southern California and going to the University of Southern California, taking up that challenge known as the Pac-12 for college basketball. And Josh, it was one of his top three schools, but a lot of people still seem a little surprised he stayed.
Yeah, Bronny James obviously going to University of Southern California. That's the big news. He is committed there. Obviously, when we talk about USC as a program, we've been talking about how well they've been doing recently in football. Obviously, Caleb Williams winning the Heisman. Lincoln Riley has built a powerhouse there within one season. So the talk around the town there is college football is back. USC historically has kind of been in the shadows in California when it comes to the history of college basketball, behind UCLA, just the factory of players that they always put out. But that's not to say that USC hasn't had good players in the past. Most recently, Evan Mobley, top 3 draft pick, went number 2 to Cleveland a couple of years ago. But now they land the big marquee guy that's going to sell out their arena. People are going to be lined up out the doors, camping in tents nights before games to see Bronny James play basketball. It's a big get for the Trojans. I do feel like this kind of gives off Kevin Durant to Texas energy, or John Morant, maybe not quite to Murray State. That's a smaller program, but just the energy of you have a very big time prospect. Obviously, Bronny isn't at the same level as his father was coming out of high school, but still nonetheless a very popular prospect going to maybe not a historical college basketball powerhouse. I do think you're going to get a ton of people tuning in to USC basketball. My concern is just from the fan perspective that it's going to be disappointing when odds are USC will make the tournament and be one win and done and be out of the tournament in the first weekend. I would love to see a guy like Bronny James playing in the Final Four. I think that's a fantastic stage. College basketball has never depended on stars making it to the Final Four, but at the same time, and just all the more sweeter, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Like college basketball is and like I feel like this is college sports in general is very like brand heavy when it comes to who goes further into the tournaments. It's more of just like icing on the cake when there is someone in there. And just to pull up a couple of stats here, look, Bronny is the 19th top prospect in the class of 2023, according to ESPN, earned a McDonald's All-American honor, projected 10th overall pick in the ESPN's really early 2024 mock draft. His top 3 schools were USC, Ohio State, and Oregon. Chose not to go to his dad's home state, stayed in the Pac-12. And last but not least, he took the recruiting class for USC, brought it to top 10 in the country, according to CBS Sports, and made the number 1 in the Pac-12. So they already have some solid guys coming in with him. Maybe they won't do as poorly as you might be thinking initially.
Oh, possibly. The recruiting class is strong. I have to double check and make sure that they're still in the Pac-12 by the time Bronny is there. I know
that's a good point. That's a good point because they might leave a little sooner. So
that could be.
I didn't think about that. I did think about their move to the Big Ten. It's like in my brain, I'm still thinking, oh yeah, 2 out of 3 are Pac-12. This might be a Big Ten school in a year.
Yeah,
but assuming he stays more than a year, from the way things are looking, they might stay for the 2023 season, but you never know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We'll find out ultimately. I think that has a big time impact on the trajectory of where that team goes, because the schedule is very different, but depending on the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, regardless of which conference they're in. Otherwise, they're both very stout conferences. Obviously, Pac-12 known as the Conference of Champions. The Big Ten every year has a number of teams that make the NCAA tournament. If they do go to the Big Ten early, and they have to face that gauntlet of a schedule. One thing that history has not been on the side of the Big Ten is in the tournament. The last time we had a Big Ten champion was the year 2000 when Michigan State beat Florida in the final.
Right.
Tom Izzo still there. Now, don't get me wrong, Michigan State they have their runs with Izzo here and there, but the Big Ten, for in large part,
That's
has
still
strong.
almost a quarter century with no one in your conference winning a national championship.
Yes, and I know that some people will come out and say, well, but Maryland won in 02. Well, at the time, Maryland was in the Big East. Maryland was not in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
but
no, that just doesn't count.
exactly. I completely agree. And back to Bronny, though, USC, another thing that I weigh when it comes to, obviously, programs, you look at the history and it makes it exciting, but also like the coaching staff. Obviously, USC has Andy Enfield, if I botched the name, but he's been there around 9 to 10 years. Just over 600 winning percentage. I don't know. I like Dana Altman, Oregon, or some other coaches. Obviously, Mick Cronin at UCLA in the conference. I think could round out his game a little bit. But obviously, maybe he's done his homework. I imagine that he's really put a lot of thought into this, and it's more than just a stay-at-home move, and it's a more of a basketball move for him as well. So there's definitely going to be all eyes on Bronny. It's going to be an exciting thing. We can't wait to see this thing rolling.
Yeah, and a couple of things I just want to mention too is just what NIL money is this guy going to get? You're in Los Angeles at a major university. You just your name, the amount we've talked about this kid, and we can say kid because he's not even a legal adult yet, which is so weird to think because we've been talking about this guy for so long. He's just getting out of high school. What do you think? Like, it's going to be an earth-shattering amount of name, image, and likeness money. He's starting college at the right time because, people we've never really heard of get big money when they're coming in the big schools.
Yeah, it's going to be record-breaking. And I will say this, I actually don't think wherever he went, I actually don't think that moves the needle much for him. He's making his money because he's Bronny James and he's already a marketable guy. We've been talking about him since high school. He could have gone to a Division II program, and we would have been talking about that Division II program.
Okay, yeah, but he wouldn't have made the same NIL money at like Kennesaw State. That's just not happening. Like big brand name going to big brand school means big brand money. Like he would have made any school. It would have been a Coach Prime situation almost where he could have just gone to any school and they are top of the heap for as long as he is there. But, from the NIL perspective, this is the perfect storm.
Yeah, it's definitely, like you said, USC obviously a big brand. It's going to be fascinating to see what team they put around him. But now, obviously, that they have landed since he has committed there, you're going to imagine that a lot of these other top high school players, some of them that might even be above him in the recruiting rankings that are still undecided, that might move the needle for them too. They may want to
happen too.
USC with him, and then maybe they do put together a Duke-like team that we saw a couple of years back with Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, and Cam Reddish. There was a time that those three guys were the three best prospects out of high school, and we were pretty much writing it in stone that Duke was going to win the whole thing that year. And they made it, I believe, to the Elite Eight and got upset. But still, that team was one of the most popular teams of my lifetime, and every game was tuned in to see what they were going to be able to do on a nightly basis.
Oh, for sure. Like it's do we call this almost like the Tom Brady effect where I get a chance to play with this guy if I go to this school. I have a chance to maybe I get to meet his dad if I go to this school. And let's just forget the whole notoriety thing. Let's go just to a pure basketball perspective. Based on the way people also talk about him, it just seems like a few years of college could do a lot of good for him. Like, I know he's probably going to jump to the NBA, be one and done just because he can get that payday right away. And all the power to you. You absolutely should. If you know you're guaranteed to be a top 10 pick, you got to go. But, a few years, he could really turn into something special if he gets a chance to really work on his craft. There's a lot of notable NBA players who would not be who they were if they were coming straight out of high school. One of those examples being Michael Jordan. Not everyone is LeBron James or Kobe Bryant.
Kevin Garnett. Yeah, like I think you touched on great points. And you know, we get to the point where, you know, stay 1 year, stay a couple more years. You know, it really depends on his development. I don't even think it's a money thing with him. And obviously back to your point with the Brady, you know, the Brady effect, it really was his dad's effect. I mean, LeBron
True,
James,
yeah, it's the
he really
LeBron
set
effect.
up like it was, he started an era that was, you know, God forbid you team up with another all-star player. It was, you want to compete against those guys. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas were always on the record. They were like, nah, I mean, we wanted to beat those guys. Jordan, Isaiah, Bird, Magic were all different teams. You couldn't even imagine those guys teaming up. Those guys wanted to
No,
go
they
at each
still
other's
wouldn't.
throats. They wanted to go at each other's throats. And but yeah, I mean, it's a great point. And I think, you know, LeBron James and obviously Bronny, you know, congrats to him. USC is a big thing. But now, obviously, you know, phenomenal decision for him. But now we can switch over to the Kentucky Derby that happened tonight.
Absolutely.
And obviously, Kentucky Derby is as good as it gets in the horse racing world. And every year, me and some of my friends, we like to pick, you know, certain horses who we think is going to do well. We saw a lot of years I just picked based on the coolest name out there. This year, I decided to just pick, you know, looking at the odds, two horses, one that was more of a favorite, one that was kind of down near the bottom, and see how it went. So I went with Verifying, and I went with Mage as my other option. Verifying, of course, was out in front for most of it. Then by, you know, after the second turn, he kind of started running out of gas, and then out of nowhere, Mage was able to take it and win the whole thing. Harrison, what were your thoughts on the race?
In Kentucky Derby, never upsets. It's obviously not the biggest upset we've ever seen. It's probably not the start of a Triple Crown run like American Pharoah, but even when it's like the 8th best odds, which is what it was for Mage, according to all the major networks, when going and making sure we knew who was the favorite ahead of the race. 15-1 odds for Mage. The top three, Mage, 2 fills, 9-1 odds, or sorry, 7-1 odds. Then you have Angel of Empire, 9-2. That's 4.5-1 odds. Mage beat all 3 of them. And I always check because my mother is a really big horse person. She went with Derma Soragaki and 2 fills. One of them placed.
Yeah, 2 fills was a good pick going in. I mean, a lot of people had either, you know, 2 fills or Empire of Angel, or I think that's what the other name was. Those were the
Angel of Empire.
Angel of Empire and 2 fills. Those were kind of the 2 popular picks going in as far as who everyone expected to win. So 2 fills coming in second. Not a surprise there, and no reason should be disappointed in that finish at all. We thought they were going to be at the top of the pack, and they really were.
Oh yeah, and just for some other odds, Tapit Trace was 9-2, King's Barn 9-1, Reincarnates. I can't read right now.
I love
13-1. I know. Verifying in Mage, they're 16-1, 17-1. I think one of my favorites is just the fact that someone's a big enough hockey fan, they called it Nyquist. Secretariat, it could only be a horse name. Wasn't there a Gronkowski horse, or am I just making that up?
Honestly, I'd have to go back and check the field, but I will say this. As far as names go, throughout the history of the Kentucky Derby, most years I am just over the top impressed with like 6+ names. To me, there were some solid names this year. I don't think the names lived up to the standard, the recent standard that is, for some of these previous ones that they've had. So I was a little disappointed there, but there were still some cool names in the bunch.
Yeah, and let's see for horse names. I just want to look at like best horse names named after a person, and just so we can go through a few of them. I thought that'd just be fun to talk about. Horses named after a person, or named. There's Bling. Oh, that one did not age well. Bling Cosby. Okay. There's Mick Jagger. Hugh Grant, Brad Pitt, Elton John, Courtney Cox. Somebody really just loves 90s, 80s and 90s media, or I guess some 70s too with Jagger and Elton John. Plus Nyquist.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's a phenomenal event every year. Obviously, it's definitely a bucket list item. Definitely want to go out and check it out at least once. Churchill Downs. Never been to the track before, but
I would love to go.
yeah.
I would love to just to have the fun playing dress up. Because
Also, yeah,
why not, right? Wear a suit, throw on a fedora or some even earlier top hat, and just have a day on the track.
I completely agree.
As exciting as this race was, someone was not as exciting, according to Falcons head coach Arthur Smith. Apparently not so exciting, as in the middle of an interview with Peter Skoransky, he was called boring. The 11th overall pick that went to the Titans was passed on by the Atlanta Falcons because Arthur Smith just was not enthused by him. Apparently, according to the draft pick himself, Smith spent the interview looking at his computer. It's like, kid, it's like you're seeing too many boring questions, and the player and Skaronski can only say, like, what else do you want me to tell you? You want me to just lie and make stuff up? Like, come on, like at this point, you're gonna get mad at someone for giving an honest answer and not being controversial when they want to be drafted.
Yeah,
being good at football.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna touch on this a little bit. So
I want to hear all your thoughts.
Arthur Smith, Falcons head coach, Peter Skronsky, one of the top tackles in this draft for context. Northwestern kid, very smart guy. So he knows what's going on. He's not going to be fooled by any of this stuff. So they have an interview. Apparently, Arthur Smith is unimpressed. He thinks he's boring. You know who else was boring? Tim Duncan was boring. Tim Duncan won 5 championships. That's neither here nor there. Peter Skronsky.
You can argue sometimes Tom Brady is not the most interesting person. Let's be honest.
He's gotten more so since he left New England. He got to be more of himself. I feel like that was a Belichick tapping him. But anyways.
But the point is.
Yeah. But to the point of like what I'm getting at here. Boring, not boring. Why does that matter? There are way too many other factors that go in to drafting players than, oh, this guy's too boring. Well, at least they stayed on brand because they didn't go boring. They drafted a running back, Bijan Robinson, who, as a player, I think Bijan Robinson is going to be a phenomenal player. The Falcons right now are drafting for need, not luxury. They have some nice young pieces, but they are not contenders. You cannot tell me you passed on arguably the best offensive tackle in the draft to draft a luxury position because you thought the guy was boring. You have to do better than that. You have to protect your quarterback. You have some of these young receivers that need to get the ball. Kyle Pitts in no way is going to get the ball if your quarterback doesn't have any time to throw it. And he's not really a blocker.
Kyle Pitts is going to have to spend the whole time blocking because that's the other thing tight ends have to do.
And he's not really a blocking tight end, which is all the more reason why you need to go O-line, especially in the position they're in. And the fact that he's just like, oh, he's too boring. Like, boring doesn't go into winning championships.
Is there just something that was not being told besides why they passed on him? Because if I'm a general manager and I find out that my head coach did not take one of the best offensive tackles, a 2-time first team Big Ten, second team the only other time, unanimous All-American, the first at his school. And you didn't take him because he's a little boring?
And we're talking about, and not just that.
We can't treat everything like they're startups. You know,
Yeah.
this isn't a tech startup where it's like, I want to make sure I can have beers with all of my coworkers. Well, you know what? I want to win a football game. I want to win as many as possible. I want to raise the Lombardi trophy. You're fired. Go have a beer at home now on the couch with your buddies.
And also to touch on another thing, it's also he's an offensive lineman. How exciting do these guys have to be? They're supposed to be there.
Literally, all they do is block.
And
It's the
he's
most theory. It's the most.
he's also supposed to be like he's at a much more valuable position. I'd argue tackle is either the number one or number two most valuable position you can have on a team.
Yes, but in theory too, it's the most boring position because they don't have any plays or stats to look at.
And it's just
so even though it's that important, there's nothing flashy about an offensive tackle. In theory, you're never going to take one. You might as well have no one line up against the front seven if you don't want boring.
I think Arthur Smith is still playing Madden at 8 years old, where it's just like, ooh, fancy player, running back. This guy scores touchdowns. Let's take him.
He's playing NFL football 94.
Yeah, it's like this isn't. I mean, yeah, Bijan Robinson's going to be a fun player. Like he's going to sell jerseys. It's going to help the bottom line. Cool. Is he going to win you more football games? We've seen, and as we've touched on in past podcast episodes, that it doesn't matter how good you have it at running back. That doesn't affect the win-loss.
At least in the modern game of football, this is not the era of Jim Brown and Eric Dickerson, where everyone was a lot smaller than you, so you had a bigger guy bulldoze everybody. Everyone's big in football, and that's why running backs are getting smaller. But yeah, but that just means we're going to throw the ball now. Get over all the big guys in front of you.
Completely agree. But yeah, that's pretty much my take on the whole thing. Arthur Smith, this is based on, to be clear, this is based on the reports that we're hearing. Obviously, if there's other stuff going on in-house that we don't know about, that's rightfully so, and that's fair. But based on what we know, this is absolutely absurd.
Yeah, and for the record, this is all from Skoronski himself. I'm surprised the Falcons haven't tried to respond to this. Like, I mean, like, even if it's not worth their time, in theory, it is such a bad look.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's a good point too. And it's like, it's also one of those things though, of like if all the reports are coming from him, you obviously don't want to be in the news for that reason, but he's in Tennessee now. It was a good pick. They also picked Will Levis in the second round. We'll see how it pans out. I mean, Skoronski could be a bust and Robinson could be a star, and we could be eating our words.
Yeah, you never know.
We'll find out. That's the beauty of it.
Exactly. But as far as I'm concerned, in the moment, if I'm a general manager and this happened, he's fired. Just like 2 coaches today who lost their jobs, one in the NBA, one in the National Hockey League. Coach Bud is out of Milwaukee after 19, 20, 21, 22. 5 seasons. I just wanted to count that on my fingers just to make sure I said the correct number, because in my brain, 2019 is 3 years ago.
Well, Harrison, you're counting all the rings that apparently Milwaukee thought he should have got. That's pretty much what you're counting, because I don't know what else this guy could have done in this scenario.
Nothing. He still won a championship.
He won a championship, and I think Damian Lillard kind of hit it on the head. He kind of tweeted out in support of Coach Bud, Portland Trail Blazers guard, Damian Lillard, that is, and he said, man, we're just out here firing coaches, championship winning coaches now. And it's like,
yeah, he's right.
You look at the history of Coach Bud's tenure in Milwaukee, and to me, it was more of I don't think they ever really wanted him to be the guy, because going back to the year they won, Kevin Durant in the first round, it was a series Milwaukee was playing against Brooklyn, and it was going to Game 7. Brooklyn kind of had Milwaukee on the ropes a little bit. Durant hit a big shot.
And his foot was on the line.
Which ultimately, I think it sent the game into a tie. They would have won it, but it tied the game. Milwaukee then responded, won the series, went on to win the championship. That 1-inch difference is the difference between Milwaukee winning a championship and making another first-round exit that year. So I think that the fact that just didn't happen and it kind of went Milwaukee's way, and they were able to go on that stretch and win the championship,
But things
It just prolonged like Bud's tenure. I think they were already ready to move off of him even back then. But the fact that he had won the title bought him a little bit more time, to the point where it's like, we can't fire this guy. He just won a championship. So they were waiting for the next possible wave it was for them to get out of it. 2 years apparently
perfect
was
excuse just happened.
and obviously he had some off the court things unfortunately happen to him. Prayers up to him and his whole family. So I didn't love the fact that Milwaukee timed it in this scenario because of other things that were going on. But I don't think they ever really wanted him for the long term, because I've seen a number of coaches win just one championship and have been around for a much longer period of time. And another interesting stat, I think it was 4 of the past 5 championship winning coaches, or 3 of the past 4, have all been removed. The only one left standing is Steve Kerr.
And Kerr, honestly, winning last year, you can argue maybe he did save his own job.
I'll be honest, he was never in trouble. And the reason why I say that is because the long pedigree he has with winning, even going back as a player, he's one of the smartest guys in the building. And nowadays, when you're a coach in basketball, it's more so about keeping a good culture as opposed to X's and O's. And because the players go out there and they do what they got to do. Steve Kerr is such a strong foundation to a culture because of all of his experience. We go back to when he was a player with Chicago. The Bulls had all sorts of different chaotic things happen. Steve Kerr got punched in the face. He himself got punched in the face by Jordan. It was this big thing. They were able to, Phil Jackson disciplined Jordan, sent him from practice. But Steve Kerr's been in these situations from a player who was a coach. You fast forward to when Draymond punched Poole in the face. He had been there. He has seen these things happen. He dealt with playing alongside Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, who didn't want to go in and take the game-winning shot. He has seen all the chaos he's ever seen. And he's really put together this strong core. And I think the players there just love him so much as like more than just a coach, but like a mentor. So the winning and losing, I know they had a past couple of years where they were bad. Injuries really the reason for that. But because of the stability that he has brought, I don't think his job was ever in danger. I think even if hypothetically it was, he wouldn't have been gone for a while. Somebody would have come in, swooped him up, and picked him up another team that needed him. So, I never thought his job was in jeopardy.
Yeah, and then look, maybe Coach Bud gets picked up somewhere else. And just to look at some of his stats, he did have trouble with the Miami Heat a couple of times, this being the straw that broke the camel's back. 6 1 seed to lose to an 8th seed ever. During Coach Bud's tenure with Milwaukee, 5 division titles, 3 1 seeds, 2 trips to the Eastern Conference Final, an NBA championship, and 2 losses to the Miami Heat, and 1 also key crucial loss in the conference final to the Toronto Raptors, who eventually went on and won the championship. We got another firing that has happened in the National Hockey League. Gerard Gallant fired by the Rangers after 2 seasons. Blew it against the New Jersey Devils, this time in the first round. Looking at some of the things that happened in the last 2 years, the Rangers went from not a playoff team at all to in the Eastern Conference Finals in 1 year, went up 2-0 on the Lightning and lost 4 straight. When they lost 4 straight, that offense dried up. 2 goals, 1 goal, 1 goal, 1 goal. Okay, we will call it and just say we lost to Andre Vasilevsky. This time around, you go 2-0. You average 1 goal. Sorry, that's the one for last year. You score 1 goal or fewer in 4 of the last 5 games of the series. When they won the games, they actually happen to have scored 5 goals all 3 times. This time, 1 goal, no goal, whatever order it was in. This offense just keeps drying up on the Rangers. It happened twice now. And when it happens in the first round, second time, after they changed goalies, by the way, Vita Vanacek got yanked for Akira Schmid, who is 20 years old and has played 24 regular season games. He has barely any minor league playoff appearances. And he holds them to 1 goal or fewer 4 times. 4. you cannot lose to a 22-year-old who is younger, barely younger than the number of games played.
Yeah, and I think also, you look at the Rangers, the way they've kind of been built and put together as a team. Obviously, they have one of the best goaltenders in the league when he's on, and Igor Shesterkin. And I mean, he was phenomenal in that game 7. They just kind of hung him
They
out.
left him out to dry. They left him out to dry.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things because he laid it all out there, and it was kind of like the opposite of what we saw from Tampa this year. You saw in the playoffs, that is. You saw, Shesterkin just playing out of his mind. And the offense hung him out to dry, whereas Tampa's offense actually was pretty sharp in the first round against the Leafs. But Vasilevsky was just kind of out of gas. And he even himself admitted after the series that he needs, to figure out how to kind of recover in the offseason to kind of get himself
They
back
all
in.
need rest so badly. We're digressing a little bit, though, but think about the Rangers. They went and they got Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko. They already have Kreider, Zibanejad, Adam Fox, all these great guys who can contribute on offense. And I know Adam Fox is a defenseman, but he will rack up assists like nobody's business. How do you do all of that and absolutely lay an egg? Like, I don't know if it's just like, it is probably some bad coaching, but there's something wrong just with the team as well. I think in just your second year, you do have to give a guy a little bit more of a chance. If this was the case, John Cooper's out after the 2016 Eastern Conference Final.
I think one of the things that we touched on, obviously, you just touched on all the acquisitions that the Rangers made, and then it's on the coach to kind of put that together as like a cohesive unit. Try to build a culture as fast as possible. Cultures aren't built in a mic. You can't. I would rather have my potato out of an oven, not in a microwave. You can't build a culture in 5 minutes. They tried to do so in New York, and obviously when you add all those players, coach is going to become a scapegoat. So even whether it was his fault or wasn't, he's now out of there in New York, and they're going to be looking for the next man for the job.
Yeah, all the praise just a year ago. And listen, this team is still good. I think they still have talent to go to the playoffs next year. They didn't need the acquisitions, but that was supposed to be what put them over the top. Oh, well, we'll see what happens. Plenty of more sports to come for you guys. We're done for today. At this point, it'll just be in a gratuitous rant if I keep going. I'm Harrison. This is Josh. This is the Awkward Sports Podcast. What are we talking about next time? I got no clue. But until then, we'll see you next time.